Welcome to the Outside Hitter Guide for Spike. We'll be covering three things today: builds, defensive rotations, and spiking advice. So let's get into it. The first thing we're going to cover is recommended builds. So basically recommended weapons or heights. We're not going to give you specific builds because there is no best build in the game. Outside hitters can be divided into two types: short hitters and tall hitters. We're going to be giving you builds for tall and short both, and we'll also be recommending you weapons.
If you're short, mainly everybody really kind of runs 5'10", maybe 5'7". Honestly, boom jump is pretty much a must on short builds for like outside, maybe even oppo. And powerful is also a good combo, boom jump, powerful. I don't really see those much anymore. Owl, I would say it's better for tall, but it is very good still. If you really want that extra, jump high, because it makes you jump above and it's really good for like bean topping. Ace is also good if you have a good setter. It is kind of setter reliant though, but if you have a good setter that can give you like consistent on point sets, it's definitely good. Rico with short, honestly, I don't know. It's not really that good. It goes pretty much nowhere. There's kind of no point. There's also Torque, which is pretty good on short as well. Not as good as tall, but it's good for like forcing it. I'm pretty sure it can still do that, and you can force waterfalls. You can hit blockouts pretty easily with Torque with a strafing, and I'm pretty sure, considering how bad they nerfed it a few updates ago, it's definitely getting a buff soon. And there's also Wreck Break for tall heights. It's very good for tall heights, especially if you're like running powerful. Even though they nerfed power, lately, if you're going against a not really that good DS or lib that don't have quick step, for example, Wreck Break is like the easiest thing to abuse. Like Wreck Break and powerful on like 6'9" and above.
What do you think about 6'7"?
Yeah, get a job, bro. Yeah. Honestly, I'm not really too familiar with tall outside. I've mainly only ever played short. 6'7" might be a decent height. 6'8" or above, I would say is probably better. Ace and stuff. Ace is also good on a tall height. Rico's pretty good, very good. Power Rico's really, really good. But yeah, there are weapons you low-key just can't run on tall, and weapons you just can't run on short. But in general, there's no real bad outside weapon. It's just about preference and how well you play with those weapons.
Let's move on to the section of the video which I'm sure most of you guys are here for, which is spiking, where there's not much you can really do when you have like a second in the air, but it's very heavily dependent on the type of set you get and where the other blocker is. So we're going to quickly show you the best places to hit regardless of your situation. We may be able to explain it to you, but we can't show you unless there's players on the field. So there you go. The first and most commonly used spot is the God spot. The God spot refers to the space between the second outside and the first outside. When you hit at a God spot, it's harder for the other team to receive because the first outside is usually blocking or covering slams, and the second outside is usually taking longs. So hitting for the mid spot or the God spot is your best bet.
And when I go against a lot of teams that cover like spots like that the outside God spot, then I just aim there. Because obviously, if I aim God spot too much, they're gonna be like, "Oh, this guy's not aiming longs. I'm just go for God spots." So I just go for longs, obviously. So how you spike, it's kind of similar to receiving. It depends on your opponent. And yeah, on the outside side, I don't really go for cuts that much because a lot of outsides, like I said earlier, just stick to the net.
Yeah.
Exactly, and you can't really cut. Like, I don't like going for deep cuts. Like, okay, I can't hit one.
You just get
Just set properly.
Hi, bro.
Yeah, I don't like going for
bro.
Yo. I no more cuts. I don't like going for cuts, but because yeah, like I said, outsides just stick to the net. It's just not ideal, honestly. And like unless you see the outside not there, there's no what the hell? That's high.
Medium.
Yeah. So yeah, that's not really unless it's a good like spot to go for, or like you're forced to, like here. If the set is off, then yeah, I don't really like going there, but it's just preference. And I mean, that's mostly like the spots I go for on the outside part of the court, other than just like going from like the corner top bins So like shifting a bit to the right, you know, to avoid the wreck a bit, like here. And just that little part that I said to wreck at, pretty much. Just keep like aiming around there if you're getting aim for outside. But
So
mainly, it's just God spots.
when you're spiking,
The line.
your build also matters a lot. So let's say you're running wreck break. You want to aim for top bins or like basically longs a little more
Longs,
because
exactly.
your wreck break will go outside here like over this thing and it's harder for them to receive. Like I said, where you hit also depends heavily on your build. If you're running a weapon like wreck break, you want to try to aim as far as you possibly can. Although wreck break isn't too fast, it goes really far in the air and putting it past the boundary will benefit you very heavily. But let's say you're running torque, right? So as a torque user, you want to try to do a wipeout as much as possible or like some sort of tool. So usually you want to aim straights rather than crosses because when you do crosses, it's really easy to like block and it gets shut down most of the time because you're aiming at the block. So when you go straights, you have way easier of a time going for like a block out here. And also the fact that if you were to hit it straight down over here, they usually end up receiving into the net because of the spin that it applies. To break it down more clearly, you have two options as a torque user. You can hit into the block while aiming for straights to force a block out. And when you're hitting the receive, you can tilt towards the left when you're on the outside position to make it so the receive forces itself towards the antenna.
If you want to avoid the block, mid cuts are also pretty nice. Like mid short cuts like here, if you're good at hitting them.
If you're tall, those mid cuts are really good, honestly. If you're tall.
Yeah, really good, bro. Some middles just, I don't know, sometimes it just phases. I don't know if it's like a hitbox issue or like people just don't know how to block them, but they're kind of like a free guaranteed score. They always go in.
Mid cuts on like let's say you get like an outside quick and you're tall build, mid cuts are really free.
Yeah, and you know the outside, even though they're net hugging, they're on the outside, so they can't do anything about it. Nobody's covering under the middle most of the
Yeah,
time.
it's either the middle
Unless,
or like
you know,
the libero, who's usually covering like
Yeah.
mid longs at the time.
yeah, Lib most likely won't go there.
Now, lastly, let's get into some defensive rotations. By defensive rotations, I mean more specifically defensive positioning as an outside. A lot of players don't know where to position themselves when they're playing outside or when they're in the back row. They kind of seem lost. So I'll be telling you how to position yourself properly.
If you're front row, then you shouldn't be sticking to the net, and you should be like moving around. This is one problem I also had for a while. I would just, you know, stick to the net and trust maybe my DS or my Lib or anyone to cover like God spot, which is here, and you know, longs and stuff, or stuff like places like here if the middle blocker can't cover it with his block. So I would just stick to the net, but that's really bad because that just leaves this part free, and you know, you can't really expect your DS to commit to every single side, like every single part of the outside part of the court. So at least you should cover front row. Even the God spot here, DSs could also cover this, but you know, if your DS is not covering it, then you should be, you know, rotating around this spot. And it should also have it like your receiving should be, you know, heavily reliant on the blocker.
Like Sung said, your receiving is an outside, or in general, should be very heavily dependent on where your blocker is. Obviously, as a person, you cannot cover the entire court, but you can cover your side of the court. And the place you cover is determined on how your blocker is funneling the spike towards you. Let's take an example. As you can see in the clip, my middle blocker is covering cross hits and my opposite is on straight longs, while my setter is keeping an eye out for slams. This leaves the opponent spiker with two options. The first being a sharp cut, which is covered by my first out, and the only other option is to hit directly towards second outside, where I'm standing. Let's use a second example, but this time from the front row. In this clip, the outside is positioned in the front row. The ball is being set to the opposite hitter. Similar to the first clip, almost every spot is covered by the team and the blocker. Although the blocker hasn't jumped yet, the general positioning allows the opponent spiker to understand that he's going for the block near the middle, eliminating that direction for a spike. The second outside is covering mids and a little bit of longs. The setter is covering cuts and the opposite is covering crosses. If you noticed, our outside isn't covering slams. That's because the opposite is jumping from the back row, meaning that he can't slam straight down, which leads him to cover a little deeper from his usual spot, leading to a clean receive.
Oh my God.
If I see the oppo, you know, spiking and I'm front row, then obviously I would go for the block, but I can't really react to quicks sometimes, so if I see a quick, then I just do
If you
this.
see like a sprint set
Shift
or
down.
like a quick set, you just don't want to go for the block because they could end up hitting it somewhere where your block isn't covering because it takes a while for you to come up because you're not full approach. And you also have a lot of hang time, so you end up like missing the receive either way. So what you usually want to do when it's like a sprint or a quick, just try to cover your spot as much as possible. And eventually through like intuition or experience, you'll understand where to cover as you play more. receiving isn't entirely intuition. It's very based on your other team as well. So, I mean, it's pretty obvious where a lot of people would think, oh yeah, outside's like the easiest position because all you have to do is score. But realistically, there's a lot more you have to do in a game scenario rather than just score. So understanding your team and understanding the other spiker matters a lot as well.
That's true. Very true. Your blocker is really important.
Yeah, your middle
When it
blocker
comes to
really does
receiving.
matter, yeah.
Depends on what they're covering and stuff, you know, but as Slime said earlier, it's not something that comes to you like overnight. It takes, you know, experience and skill to get used to it.
So that's all for today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed it because I spent a good amount of time editing this, and I tried a new style of sort of like delivering my point across, making it a little more intentional and professional. So regardless of all of that, if you guys have any questions, please do let me know. And I've also made a whole new Discord for all of you guys so I can interact with you guys a bit more. I'll be hosting game nights, and I'll just be interacting with you guys a little more. And I'm also streaming a lot more on Twitch now, which I'll leave up on screen right now. So if you want to drop by and say hi, I'd really appreciate that. And the best way to reach me through Discord, if you have any personal questions or if you have any questions that you might not want to, you know, ask in the comments below, you can always come to my Discord and ping me there. I'm always open to any sort of questions or any sort of conversation. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and a big thank you to Sung for helping me out. You know, if you see him in game, just tell him, give him a nice thank you. That's all I can ask. Make sure you like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Bye bye.